I want to preface this discussion by stating that I am excited for all of the RPGs on this list, and I'm genuinely rooting for all of them to succeed. Today's video, however, is much more focused on potential problems and concerns that I have for these games, as I think it's interesting to discuss these now and then revisit them later on after games have released. I do have a sponsor in today's video, but more on that in a little bit. First up on the list is Avowed, which is expected to release in fall of this year, 2024. So yeah, Microsoft acquired Obsidian in 2018, but recent studio closures such as Arcane Studios Austin, Tango Gameworks, AlphaDog, and Roundhouse Games have raised concerns about Obsidian's future. Some of these studio closures were unexpected from a consumer's perspective, so I think it's fair to also be concerned for Obsidian. Or maybe, just maybe, Obsidian is Microsoft's favorite child and they're going to shower them in love and resources. Well, if we look at Avowed's development history, that doesn't really seem to be the case here. Avowed was initially meant to be this sprawling open-world RPG, something akin to Skyrim. Well, it has been scaled back significantly, and it now resembles the much smaller, more confined Outer Worlds. This shift has disappointed many fans who anticipated Obsidian at taking a bat at doing a major RPG instead of just rather small AA-like titles, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with making those types of games. But as the old adage goes, under-promise and over-deliver, and Obsidian seems to be going backwards here. The visuals of Avowed have changed from a dark, gritty, realistic, medieval style to something more akin to Disney, Pixar in a way, and I actually like the current visuals, but once again, we're focusing on the change here. Avowed was also revealed to only feature 2 playable races and no classes when this game is set in the world and lore of Aora from the Pillars of Eternity CRPG series, which offers 6 different races and 11 classes. I feel like there's a real opportunity here to use the Pillars series to really just pull in RPG lovers and give us this really in-depth RPG, but even as someone who has been looking at this game positively, and I still think it has a chance at being a pretty good game, it just feels kind of mediocre and streamlined up to this point. But before we get too deep into it, I have partnered with Geology to bring you this sponsored video. So Geology creates simple and effective skincare and hair routines that are customized just for you with ingredients that are proven to work and trusted by dermatologists. Do you want to look like your favorite video game companions? Well, you better start taking care of your skin. As you can see right here, I got my everyday face wash, my morning moisturizing cream, which also has SPF, my night cream, and also my eye cream for those dark circles on my eyes that are finally starting to go away. Am I getting old? Geology is the people-proven skincare with 10,000 plus 5-star reviews and 30 prestigious awards, including nods from Men's Health and awards from Oprah Daily Grooming. One of my favorite products aside from the face wash is the morning moisturizing cream, which not only makes my skin look and feel better, but it also protects me from the sun when I actually allow myself to see the sun before I lock myself in a room to play video games all day. Reduced oiliness, smoother, more hydrated skin, less darkness around the eyes, and getting ahead of that wrinkle game. Another great thing is that Geology products are super easy to use and understand, and with the routines being tailored for each individual, this commitment to better skincare feels natural and easy. So what are you waiting for? Use my code and grab 70% off the skincare trial set and also 50% off on any add-ons. It's a great deal to help you get started on that path to more confidence. Back to the video. Moving on to Dragon Age Dreadwolf. And my first pretty major concern here is BioWare. Like, who is BioWare now? BioWare as a studio name is responsible for several of the greatest games of all time, but most of those games I think many would agree are pre-2014-ish. No one thinks of BioWare in modern times as still holding the crown for being a king of RPGs, and I think at this point they may even have lost their nobility status. BioWare just really hasn't done much to talk about over the past decade or over the past 5 years, except laying off approximately 50 devs that were working on Dragon Age 4, which included some veteran devs that played a large role in BioWare's foundational success. Now, do keep in mind that EA did acquire BioWare back in 2008, so this is of course all under the direction of EA. Now, we can never know the exact reasons for why certain devs were chosen, etc., but it certainly doesn't inspire confidence, especially when you hear of some of the former BioWare devs that were laid off suing BioWare for better severance. There's nothing pretty about any of that. Also note that these layoffs were announced in late 2023, a time when BioWare should be full force on Dragon Age 4's development if it was going well, which clearly there had to be problems. That doesn't mean that these problems can't be overcome, but you just can't ignore that all of this is going on like in the core stages of Dragon Age 4's development. And speaking of development, DA4 started in 2015 but was canceled in 2017 and then rebooted in 2018. Like, what the hell is going on here? And this brings us into my concern with BioWare's writing. The writing, world lore, dialogue, companions, etc. have always been a key part of the Dragon Age franchise. Well, David Gator, the former lead writer of the Dragon Age games and also the author of the Dragon Age book series, which I'm currently reading right now, he left BioWare in 2016, and around that time he stated that video game writing was constantly undervalued, even so at BioWare, where in his words he said, built its success on a reputation for good stories and characters. And I gotta say, I wholeheartedly agree with that. David also said, and this is a quote from a tweet of his, "It slowly turned from a company that vocally valued its writers to one where we were quietly resented, with a reliance on expensive narratives seen as the albatross holding the company back." Basically, David was saying from his perspective at that time, BioWare was not treating their video game writing as something that needed good support and priority. Yeah, that just doesn't inspire confidence, but I'm not done yet. We can't forget Drew and Mac Walters, two major writers for Mass Effect. They left BioWare with Drew saying that the company had become too corporate, and Mac Walters was also actually the production director for DA4 at one point. And speaking on DA4 again, Matt Goldman, Dragon Age 4's senior director, left in an apparent mutual decision, whatever that means. And there's even several more. People, of course, leave jobs all the time, but this just feels a little different, doesn't it? Also, in regards to the writing, the Dragon Age games have always been political in nature, very political in nature, but it's important that these politics remain, feeling natural and organic to the story and the game and the world versus feeling preachy, like a company's trying to teach you something outside of just the game. And I think folks from both sides of the spectrum of politics and beliefs and social beliefs, etc., can all agree on that. And doing this successfully in a game or in a piece of writing these days requires writers that are highly skilled and talented. We just don't know how many of those are still around at BioWare. It'll certainly be interesting to see how that plays out with a modern day Dragon Age game. Another concern for DA4 is what direction are we going in with the gameplay mechanics? DA4 is looking to be much more focused on action combat versus tactical combat. And I think it's even possible that the tactical side of DA's combat could even be completely gone, but we have to wait and see. Don't quote me on that. Dragon Age games as a whole have always seemed to be kind of going through a bit of an identity crisis. Even though I like the combat systems in all of them, just the unpredictability and uncertainty as to like what the next Dragon Age game is going to have for such a core system of a game is a little bit worrisome, even though it could still turn out to be really good. And then you can think of other changes from each Dragon Age game, such as Inquisition, implementing all these MMO-like elements, which is kind of odd. My main concern here is the possibility that BioWare's goal with this more action-focused combat system is to not necessarily create a great combat system, but more so to create a combat system that appeals to as wide of an audience as possible at the cost of depth, of course. Breadth at the cost of depth. That's a legit concern that I have, but we'll have to wait to find out. Moving on, Fable, one of the most classic franchises in RPG history, is getting another game. And let's just start right off once again with Microsoft. Playground Games is Xbox Game Studios, which is of course Microsoft. And like we discussed earlier in the video, no one really knows what's going on with the gaming departments at Microsoft in general. I'm concerned for all Xbox and Microsoft stuff at the moment. Now, Fable itself, we did get a CGI trailer for it back in July of 2020, which I would say was pretty cool. But then we didn't see or hear basically anything on the game until 3 years later, where they dropped, I would say, a pretty confusing trailer that didn't really help or reveal much, even though it's all supposedly in-game footage, but like it's hard to tell. What is this? Is this game going to be like a Hellblade cinematic adventure? Or what's up here? How is this in-game footage? Explain it to us. All of us Fable fans just need one little thing that shows us that this is going to be a Fable game. Just like a little something. Just like even a character just like simply walking down a road, but not this narrative cinematic shots that we're getting. Like one that actually looks like Fable gameplay and maybe have like horns popping out of the character's head a little bit. That would be huge. That's all we need. And perhaps we will get that in the near future. I'm not going to get too caught up on the recent trailer, but as of now, we just don't know. And on a side note to that, and this may not affect anything, but I am a little bit concerned that a studio that makes Forza racing games is now taking on one of the most iconic RPG franchises of all time. Like, Playground doesn't really have experience in this field, but it doesn't mean that they can't pull it off or can't hire a bunch of devs that do have that experience, but it is something to consider. Are they competent in this area of RPG expertise? Not sure, but I'll remain optimistic for now. And this brings us into Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, and let's start off with a gameplay trailer that was released earlier this year, which did not get great reception, especially from fans of Bloodlines 1. Games Radar even said that the gameplay looked more like a Dishonored pre-alpha than a refined Bloodlines sequel set to launch later this year. If we take a look at some of the YouTube comments under their gameplay or their recent gameplay trailer or demonstration, whatever you'd call it, it's really hard to find positive ones. As someone who has not played the first game, I don't think the trailer looks like that horrible, but it certainly doesn't really get me excited either, not to mention some of the textures look like they're from 2012. Let's get into reasons as to why this may be. For those unaware, Hardsuit Labs, alongside of course Paradox Interactive, who own the IP and are also the publisher and doing some development for the game, initially announced this game's release for March of 2020. That was then delayed to an unspecified 2020 date to then be delayed to 2021. And that never happened, of course. But what did happen in 2021 was an announcement that Hardsuit Labs was no longer working on the game. Like, what the hell is going on here? Paradox Interactive would eventually announce in 2023 that the Chinese Room, a British developer, had taken over development of the game, and now it's supposed to be coming out later this year. That's a messy, probably drama-filled development right there, and I think you'd be crazy to think that it hasn't affected the game itself, but a lot of people love Bloodlines 1. I'm trying to stay excited for this one. I think I'm going to give it a shot, but we'll find out. And the final game on this list that I wish I didn't have to include, I really wish I didn't have to. We don't have much to go off of this game, of course, and this is The Elder Scrolls 6. I'd say out of all the upcoming RPGs, this is one of my top most hyped games, but I'm also extremely worried after Bethesda's Starfield. I didn't think Starfield was the worst game ever or anything like that, but it was a pretty big disappointment and letdown coming from Bethesda, a company that's supposed to be a leader in the industry with so many successful games in the past. Bethesda, come back to us. And that naturally leads to concerns for The Elder Scrolls 6 and whether or not Bethesda can still create that magic, or if they still have it in them. Imagine if Todd was like, you can explore 1,000 mountains in The Elder Scrolls 6 for their first development update. That would be something else, wouldn't it? And that's going to be it for this video. I will try to remain cautiously optimistic for all these games and try to report all of them without being biased towards these negative concerns. I'm going to try to step away from that and just view these games with an open slate. But it's going to be interesting to come back to these thoughts and see how they all played out. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to Geology for sponsoring this video. I'll catch you on the next one.